Welcome back, gang. It's Deltia from Deltia's Gaming here with James, a VR3 Templar Aldemary Dominion faction. How do you say your character's name? Abusador?
Yep, that is correct.
Wow, I got a name right. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good, man. How are you?
Good. So you came to me, pinned my build, wanting to do more damage. You're not at endgame, but your issue is running out of resources and just kind of finding your way around the Templar. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, not a lot of information about Templar, so I will try to do my best to show you. But first, what we're going to do is go over your skills, champion points for the viewers to see what you're working with. We're going to do this dungeon and get a baseline test of your damage per second, or DPS. Why? Because if we're going to do some improvement, we need to measure it and see where we're at first. You need Foundry Tactical Combat. So let's show the viewers real quick what you're working with. Okay, so this is what James came here with. Werewolf, got those as the ultimates, so that's a little problem right there. Now, Werewolf is a good ultimate nowadays based on physical damage, and you can set up a build to run off of Werewolf and be pretty effective, PvE or PvP. The problem is double barring this. Yes, you get stamina recovery, but with a 400 ultimate cost or so, you need for PvE a heavy hitter like Meteor or Nova, and then also you need Flawless Stormbreaker, 8% more weapon damage just for having it slotted. So typically what most players do is have a DPS bar, and they have Flawless Stormbreaker on that to benefit from it. And then they have their damage-producing ultimate like Nova or Meteor or something like that on the back bar, and they just swap, and that's what's used for buffs. So he's going dual wield and bow, and if you notice his build early on, he basically has no way to heal himself. Like, no way to heal himself, besides puncturing sweeps. So a lot of players take puncturing sweeps early on, because they look at it and goes, oh look, it heals me. Now the heal is very nice, but that's only if you're playing Magic, because remember, it's based on the amount of damage done. So if you're a stam build pumping up your max stamina, weapon critical, and weapon damage, you're not getting healed for peanuts, and the ability doesn't do very good. You need to take the other morph, Biting Jabs. Gives you crit, scales off of stamina rather than magic. You're going to hit a lot harder and do more damage, and you'll be lacking the heal. So what I recommend is using a two-hander for this build. That way he can have a reliable self-heal, a heal over time with Rally, and rechange this to Biting Jabs and keep it simple. So this is not simple. Rapid Strikes along with Jabs, he basically has two abilities to spam doing damage. Since you have a class-specific ability as a Stam Templar with Biting Jabs, there's really no reason to use Rapid Strikes. Repentance, fantastic ability, does great heal, gives you minor fortitude, endurance, and intellect, and you can restore stamina. Gotta have it, so that's good. Steel Tornado is also really, really good. Best AoE in the game, really. Stamina-based, huge range, so that's really good. Rending Slash is a very good ability. It's great because it's a good damage over time effect. But what you have right here is basically 4 damage abilities, no way to heal himself without corpses, and kind of like just a hodgepodge of skills. So what we're going to do is switch this up to two-hander, so he can be more sustainable and also not die as often. Because at the end of the game, if you're playing with other players you're not familiar with, you got to find a way to self-heal. You got to. Then the confusion starts even more here with the bow bar. Now, a lot of players, like I said, a good basic build is one where you set up your damage on one bar and then buffs and whatnot on the other bar. And you could do really complex builds and bar swap every 5 seconds, and there's some of those builds out there. I have some, but it's not exactly easy for newer players to get a hold of. So he has Poison Injection, bow build. This is good. Draining Shot, it's a knockback, which he could use his Adric a spear ability to get more crit damage and drop this. Lethal Arrow, good in PvE, just doesn't hit that hard, and then AoE, Arrow Spray. So he has basically the same abilities doing the same stuff on both bars. So he needs to pick one, pick up Scorched Earth, which is a good damage over time ability on the bow. Evil Hunter, that's a no-brainer on the back bar. You want to have that, that's great. And then, once again, Werewolf Berserk. So let me show him my basic Templar build. And when I say basic, it's meant as basic. Just something to get him by for now so he understands the game and concept. Okay, now the fun part. We're going to get to DPS. So this is damage per second. And you have those two things bound. What I'm going to do is taunt this boss, turn him around. It has 500,000 hit points at VR3. So this will last, just depends on how long you do. And why we come here or Spindle Clutch is because, well, it's the big boy damage, is single target. There's no ads, there's nothing else, it's just you and damage.
Right.
So, once again, this is not to make you feel bad or embarrass you, this is just to get a baseline test so we can improve on it, okay?
All right.
All right, I'm gonna go pull 3, 2 now.
Out of stamina.
Okay.
And this is basically just running on empty.
Okay, so let's post your DPS and see what you get here.
Alrighty, so that's 7.
Okay, so you're at 4,800 DPS.
Wow, that is bad.
That's bad.
That is very bad.
It's very bad. Luckily, we're going to get you way higher than that. Way higher.
All right.
So let me jump on my Templar and explain to you what you're doing wrong. So it's going to be long, but I'm telling you what, a lot of people get good information out of this. So let's just go eat our humble pie. I've had to eat it too. Let me jump on my Templar. Okay, I'm on my Templar, also Imperial, Steve Jabs, and I'm going to explain to you kind of what you're doing wrong and how we can benefit from it. Okay, so, ooh, Damaris Rock, got to pick that up. First things first, I take it you didn't watch my video, Buff Spam Execute, how to set up your DPS bar. No?
Nope, have not watched that.
Okay, go give me some clicks after this, but it's going to make your life a whole lot simpler. DPS in Elder Scrolls Online is not World of Warcraft. It's not Rift, it's not SWTOR, it's not any of that other stuff. It doesn't have cooldowns per se, unlike other things, except basically an ultimate. You can just spam the same ability over and over, and good DPS builds have something they can spam over and over and over. The problem with your build is you have 3 things you can spam over and over and over, and they're the wrong things to spam. So,
okay.
Buff, spam, execute. If you or anyone watching this gets anything out of this video, buff, spam, execute. So, what do I mean when I say buff? The first part. All stamina builds. Repeat. All stamina builds need to run 1 buff. Major Brutality. Major Brutality gives you 20% more weapon damage. Imagine having this up at all times when you're doing damage. 20% more weapon damage. You don't have that right now in your current build. That is a huge problem. You're missing out on tons and tons of damage. So, how do you get this? A couple different ways. Rally is the obvious way with a 2-hander, and it's what I like to use on my Templar. My 2-hander bow build is very versatile. So I can do VMA, I can do PvE, I can do PvP, for instance. I can do almost everything with this one build, bow and 2-hander. I have great survivability, I have awesome buffs, and I have an execute, buff, spam, execute. So you're missing the spammable ability, you're missing the buff, and you're missing the execute. Dual wield you can make work, but I'm telling you right now, it's a lot simpler running a 2-hander. So, the last ability in 2-hander is Rally, the morph that I like to take. It gives you heals over time, so you just have it up for 33 seconds, and then if you press it again within that duration, it gives you a monster heal. Otherwise, as a Stamp Templar, unless you do PvP, what healing do you have to rely on? Well, your class healing sucks, because Honor the Dead is based off of what? Your max stats, your max magic. So, Honor the Dead heals for 3,700, when Vigor does 11k, over 5 seconds. It's just tremendously bad heal because it factors in magic, which you don't have a whole lot of. So the couple ways to heal and keep yourself alive, in the buff spam execute concept, two-hander, rally. Gotta have it. It does a couple things. Keeps you alive, gets your major brutality. Also, PvP, assault, resolving vigor. You don't have to have resolving vigor, but when you do, it makes your life a lot easier. Another thing is ritual, the fourth ability in restoring light. You put this down in the next patch. Is going to be extremely useful because it's going to give you major mending while you're in there, and also why you move out of it. Let's see, it doesn't have that on the tooltip right now. So extended ritual, you drop it down in location, and next patch you'll drop this down, and then you do vigor, or you do rally, or whatever. You'll do a monster amount more of healing than what you do right now.
Okay.
Here's some mobs. Let me kill these guys. Rip. So here's a little preview. Oh, I didn't buff. See? Now listen to my own information. Rip. All right, Scorpion. Buff, spam, execute. So they just got a taste of it. How dare you interrupt my video, Scorpion? Okay, so that's a couple things to do to survive. Now I'm just giving you information. This isn't necessarily what your bar is going to be set up like. So,
okay.
Buff. We got the one buff that we're going to always keep up, which is major brutality with two-hander primarily. I'm going to get to the execute right away. So we're jumping to spam, we're into execute. Another ability that you need is Executioner, the two-handed tree, fourth ability. Why? Because you have no physical execute. An execute simply means when a mob's health reaches a certain threshold, and for this instance it's about optimal around 25% of their health, you need to stop everything that you're doing and use that one ability because it will do the most damage. So the whole time you're DPSing in this game, you're literally keeping up one or two buffs. You're pressing the same button over and over until those buffs run off, until the boss gets, or whatever mob gets to 25%. And then you press your one button. That's all DPS is in this game. Buff, spam, execute. Okay, so my bar setup is, for this build, I have Crit Rush. It's a gap closer for two-hander. I have Rally. That's my buff that I use all the time. I have Repentance. This is why I get stamina back after fights or while there's corpses available. It gives me good regen just for having it slotted in my main damage bar. And then Biting Jabs. If you're not using this as a Templar, no offense, but you're wrong. It is the bread and butter attack. It's AoE. It gives you your major Savagery, which is your other buff that you're going to want to keep up. It stuns enemies right now. It procs Burning Light. It is the #1 source of damage. Now, you can use Wrecking Blow in PvP instead of this or whatever, but PvE, this is your spammable attack. Biting Jabs. You have Puncturing Sweeps. So Puncturing Sweeps is the other morph. Why is it not effective? Yes, it has healing with it associated, and that looks really juicy when we're starting out. You don't need heals. You need damage because it's based off of physical damage. So you picked a magic morph that's looking at your character and going, well, he has 5,000 magic. He's going to hit like a noodle. When you could take the other morph and go, hey, this guy has 20,000 stamina. It's going to hit really, really hard. So that change alone will be amazing for you.
Okay.
Another thing is it keeps it, it's one of these, the premise, keep it simple, stupid. You can have dual wield and use Steel Tornado for AoE. So when we were back there, you were not using Steel Tornado, which is the best AoE in the game. But with this build, you can just keep it ridiculously simple. Biting Jabs is the best single target and pretty close the best AoE. So you have one button to click in all situations. It makes it so much easier to play this build. So that's how I set my bar up. And then also Executioner. So everything that I need, if I don't do anything else, is literally on my bar. I don't have to swap bars. I can heal. I can buff. I can spam. I can execute. I can gap close. This is the easiest way to play a Templar. Flawless Dawnbreaker is my ultimate. Now that's obtained by killing Undead and Daedra. Having it slotted 8% weapon damage. Also, you didn't use an ultimate. I see a lot of players, especially newer players, don't use ultimate. Use it early, use it often. I see you're a werewolf, which is fine, and werewolf is great or whatever, but don't double bar the ultimate. It does not make sense. Yes, you get stamina regeneration, but Flawless Dawnbreaker or Shooting Star or nearest, because you probably don't have access to those, Solar Prison and Dawn's Wrath. Those are your bread and butter DPS abilities. Use them. I mean, I'd rather have you use an ult accidentally than never use one. They're ultimates. It just sounds cool. That's what they're used for, is kicking ass, especially on a boss phase. Almost all my dungeon runs, if you've ever seen one of the videos, is we hold ultimates until the boss phase. All 4 players drops a damage ultimate and everything just melts. So that alone will increase your damage doing ultimates.
Okay.
Okay. So something you did right is dual wield Rending Slash. It's a very powerful dot in dual wield. Now we're probably going to take that away for your build and just make it a lot more simple and give you a lot better healing as well. But Rending Slash was a good choice. Dual wield is probably the optimal way to play a Templar for pure DPS perspective. I mean, just all out how much possible damage I can do. But we're going to keep it simpler. So that was a good pick. Repentance on your main bar, that was a great pick. Now, you have bow and you have some damage abilities with the bow, but bow right now just does not compete with melee. It just doesn't. And it's due to the scaling, and the next update it will come back. So the way I use my bow bar is simply for buffs. And that is Bracer Caltrops and Alliance ability. It's a damage over time effect. You don't have access to that. Scorched Earth, which is the arrow spray up in the air. So you have arrow spray, which is the unmorph bow ability. It's an AoE, and it's a good one. The morph version Bombard is absolutely fantastic for PvP. And you can use it in PvE to keep mobs away from you. It's a spammable thing, but you really want to stick with your bread and butter biting jabs. And Lethal Arrow, once again, it is fantastic in PvP because it's a healing debuff on an enemy. PvE, it just doesn't have the same staying power as biting jabs. I would drop it. And if you want to do some things in PvP for a Stam Templar or a Bowplar, you can. And the optimal thing to run is Poison Injection. That's your damage over time effect. Lethal Arrow is your spammable effect. And then your Dawn's Wrath ability, there's a morph in here for Backlash. Let's see. I have one skill point. It's called, what's it called? Power of the Light. And it has a debuff on the enemy's armor. It stores up damage and it blows up. So if you want to run a Bowplar, you need those 3. Poison Injection, Power of the Light, and then Lethal Arrow. So you can switch those out, but you got to realize your context. PvE, you need biting jabs. You really do.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to hammer this home. Buff, spam, execute. I've said it probably 30 times. If you're playing the drinking game at home, drink. Hold on, let me get a drink. Okay, so I want to drill this home so you understand this. Major Brutality, 33 seconds. So we're going to keep that up at all times. Now, Major Savagery, that's just the code word for Major Crit. That is done by using biting jabs. It lasts 8 seconds. So on our bow bar, we don't use biting jabs, right? There's another way to get Major Savagery, Major Crit, which is Evil Hunter. The third ability in Fighter's Guild. You can have Camo Hunter if you like the PvP. Evil Hunter I recommend for Stam Starve classes, just because it gives back and refreshes it. So this gives you the crit, not for activating it, but just for having it slotted. Also, it is a tremendous damage boost to use this against multiple mobs or Daedra. And it refreshes if you kill the Daedra within, I think, 14 or 15 seconds. Fantastic buff. So we keep that on. So on our bow bar, when we switch, we're not losing critical damage. And that's very important for a lot of people to understand. Another thing that's very important for a lot of people to understand that don't is how the Aedric Spear passives, Dawn's Wrath passives, factor into your damage. So if you go to Aedric Spear, Burning Light, this is a monster passive. It's still going to be a monster in the future. Gives you a 25% chance to cause an extra blah 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 magic damage when you hit an Aedric Spear ability. So that puncturing sweeps, aka biting jab, is the one you should be taking. Every little jab, that has a chance to proc this. Think about how much more damage that is.
Right.
All the time you have a chance to proc this. So it is important that you get this maxed out right away. And it also is important that you spec your champion points a little differently based on this one thing. It's that important.
All right.
Balanced Warrior, another reason to level up your Adric Spear ASAP, getting that extra weapon damage. And that goes really well with the massive amount of stamina that Imperial Templars have. Okay, are we tracking so far?
Yep.
Okay, I know it's a lot to learn.
Oh, no, you're fine, man.
And then a couple other things that will help you out is Prism, the Dawn's Wrath ability. Now, if you're playing a Bowplar, you're going to be keeping up Power of the Light. And this will generate a lot of ultimate for you. Otherwise, Stamped Templars don't use a whole lot of Dawn's Wrath abilities. So that's one advantage to playing a Bowplar, and specifically PvP. Okay, so let me show the viewers what this looks like. So on my back bar, just what I use in... oh, I forgot to mention the most important thing. Piercing Spear. While an Adric Spear ability is slotted, increase the damage from your critical strikes by 10%. So if you don't have any Adric Spear ability on your front bar or your back bar, you're missing out on 10% crit damage. It's a significant amount. It's a tremendous amount. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. So on your Templar, all I do is buff, spam, execute. So on my back bar, I'm not going to use what I usually use because you don't have access to Caltrops or Scorched Earth, but you will. I'm going to buff with Evil Hunter, Rally. I'm going to crit rush in, light attack, biting jabs, and biting jabs, and biting jabs. You guessed it, biting jabs, biting jabs. Getting below 50% stamina, potion, and biting jabs. And guess what? Some more biting jabs. And you guessed it, more biting jabs. Boss is reaching 25% health. My rally is still up. Execute. That's Templar DPS. That is stamina DPS. It is that simple. And it is that effective. Right there, just doing that, not using ultimate, screwing around, I got 17,000 single target DPS. And when we change your build, and we will, you're going to get 10,000 plus damage. Say it right now.
That is exactly what I'm looking forward to.
Say it right now. Say I, James,
the
man, am going to get 10,000 single target damage on YouTube.
I'm going to do it. I, James, the man, am going to get 10,000 single target damage on YouTube.
Yes, you are. So what I want to do is go back to the lab and redo your gear a bit. You're using 5 Huntings, 4 Night Mothers. So 5 Huntings is almost like you have to do it, right? I mean, it's just too powerful not to use it. Now, we're going to go down to 3-piece. And the reason why, we're going to be using bow and 2-hander. We're going to be leveling up your bow, finishing off your class skill lines, getting a lot of sky shards, those sorts of things. And then we're also going to use a 3-piece set with regeneration. Also, we're going to use a expensive food, but a worthwhile food, and that is Orzammar Tripe Trifle Pocket. Gives you, the nice thing is you can use this from level 1 to VR 15. Gives you
Nice.
5,000 max health and 400 stamina recovery. So
Nice.
you'll be getting roughly almost 600-700 more stamina recovery with these two things. Yes, you will be losing out on max stamina, but at endgame, using this food, I'm still over about 30,000 stamina, roughly. So you can still do a lot of damage, because you're not doing any damage when you run out of resources. That doesn't help anyone.
Right.
Okay. So you've been very, very good eating the humble pie. I've had to do it. Everyone has to do it, and it's just part of the game. Now, before we let you go, and we're going to do phase 2, which is just practicing, and crafting, and practicing, what questions do you want to ask me?
Well, you basically covered most of the bases. I was going to ask you about my gear.
Okay.
What you thought of the Hunting's Rage mixed with the Night Mother set. I don't want to do this Dolman right now.
That's a really good setup, but it's based on high damage, and it's based on someone with a race or a class that has a lot of sustained. Stamped
Right.
Templar sustain is just really non-existent on Imperial unless you're killing stuff.
Right.
So you have to spec a little bit geared more towards sustained with that setup. So we'll change that, but that's a good setup. So part 2, what we need to do is recraft your gear, go over your skills, and then it's just one thing for me to say it, but it's another for you to do it. So we're going to practice, whether it's we do the crocodile 55 times or whatever. We are going to hit the 10K mark.
All right.
Sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right, let's get to work.